In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Sexual Problems of the Youth by Ayatollah Makarem Shirazi. Preface. Towards awakening the society. Parents are in a deep state of sleep, while the youth seem indifferent towards issues which will play a key part in their future destiny. It seems that the people, due to a feeling of fear, prefer to forget the issues which face them, rather than dealing with them head-on. Perhaps the thought is that by waiting a problem out, the specific problem will disappear by itself. In the meantime, many generations of innocent youth are sacrificed at the altar of negligence, heedlessness, and ignorance. And ultimately, this has caused the society to become entirely corrupt and dysfunctional. We find it strange that during the span of each year, there are thousands of conferences and seminars all around the world that are established to investigate various issues, such as the biology of various marine animals, underwater mining, the direction of winds and typhoons, pests which infest the cotton plant, the extinction of the mountain goat, the decrease in the number of penguins, the anatomy of the firefly, and other such topics. Yet, at the same time, almost no attention is paid to issues concerning the youth, who are the most essential and precious treasures of our societies. Why is this the case? Unfortunately, our present-day world is not ruled by the intellect or wisdom, and oftentimes, something which is the reality is not taken into consideration and is actually ignored. The only issues which are dealt with are usually the result of personal, regional, emotional, or recreational impulses, rather than issues which affect the heart of the society. If this was not the case, then why should such issues related to the youth be utterly forgotten and ignored to such a large extent? The intellectuals and scientists of the world community have indeed fallen short of their human responsibility, but this shortfall should not lull parents and the youth into coming short in regards to their own personal and social responsibilities. One of the most important and critical problems faced by the youth of today is that which is related to various sexual issues. Unfortunately, we have to admit that this problem is becoming even more complicated and serious due to various factors of modern-day life, such as the technological advancements which are taking place in the society, the long duration of schooling and education, the availability of luxury items throughout all classes of society, and the lack of mutual trust between men and women. We have openly and clearly discussed various problems throughout this book, and we have also proposed various solutions. Although some people believe that there are no solutions to these problems, we have proven, God willing, that this is not the case, and that there are actual solutions to the sexual problems of the youth. One of the most important factors towards solving these issues will be the willingness of parents and the youth to sit down and truly push for change. We have, furthermore, discussed the issues related to sexual perversions and excesses, and the practical ways of preventing and treating them. We trust that studying this section will prove useful for all young men and women towards carefully sidestepping such problems, and if necessary, freeing themselves from them. We pray to God, who has power over all things, to bestow success upon all of the youth in resolving their problems at this most critical stage in their lives. This is our utmost desire. Makarem Shirazi. The Holy City of Qom, August 1971. A problem called marriage. Barriers to spouse selection. Every youth faces these problems. Statistics have shown that the rate of marriage, particularly in recent years, has decreased considerably. In addition, the actual marriage age, especially in the bigger cities and places whose lifestyle matches such cities, has increased considerably. This has resulted in the youth getting married at an age where their actual period of youth is practically at an end, and the vitality and energy that is associated with this period of life has mostly faded away. This, in essence, means that the youth are getting married at a time when the prime age of marriage has actually ended. This is caused by several various factors, of which the most important are as follows. Number 1, an extended period of education and schooling. Number 2, the expanded possibility of illicit relationships. Number 3, heavy expenditures and material expectations related to marriage. And number 4, a feeling of distrust between the males and the females among the youth. Here, we will study in detail the first 2 points, which play a more significant part as a preventative factor in marriage. Without really studying this issue in depth, or trying to understand its causes, several social planners have proposed a plan by the name of compulsory marriage. This plan in reality means that the state should impose a type of special tax on singleness, with the intent of pushing youth towards becoming married at an earlier age. Another idea for proponents of this plan include denying employment to single people in various institutions, as well as other types of similar punishment. Some youth have asked about my opinion in regards to such plans and whether it would be a both effective and proper solution. We believe that if such measures were enacted in society, and for example, employment was denied to those who were single, then this would be at best effective in the short term, but it would not constitute a permanent solution. In addition, it may even bring about certain undesirable side effects. The words marriage and compulsion are 2 terms that are completely at odds with one another. Saying compulsory marriage is similar to saying compulsory friendship and affection. Is it really possible to impose true friendship and affection between 2 people by the utilization of the force of law? Marriage, in its proper understanding, is a kind of spiritual and physical relationship, which will help establish a peaceful life in society, and one of its most important conditions is that of sincerity and honesty. Due to this reason, marriages must be established in a free atmosphere, without any external impositions. Therefore, Islam repudiates any marriage contracts that are drawn up without the full agreement of both parties. Marriage cannot be seen as a sort of military duty, where one is sent off to a camp in order to learn various techniques under the force of compulsion. It is strange that various social planners are trying to reform the present-day condition of our society, which is itself the result of a series of social abnormalities, without paying the least attention to its actual causes. It is our opinion that even if such plans are workable, they will prove to be only superficial fixes to the problems at hand. If we were to actually fix the root issues, then the abnormal and illogical present-day situation of marriage would automatically resolve itself. Due to this reason, we have to undertake a deep study of each of the 4 aforementioned factors, independent of one another, in order to truly understand the problems that face us at a societal level. The extended duration of education, the first great barrier of marriage. Although not all youths remain unmarried due to the long period of modern-day education, it is the case that many of them do find this issue to be a significant factor. The educational period for most majors is approximately 18 years, and in some cases, it extends beyond this as well. When a young man or woman graduates from college, they are about 22 to 25 years of age, and it is at this point that they begin to look for an entry-level job. The irony is that by this age, the period of their youth has, for the most part, passed. Additionally, it seems very likely that as the extent of specialization increases, so will the period of education. At some point in the future, it is not unlikely that the age of study will lengthen until a well-educated individual has reached the age of 35. The main question here is whether marriage should depend upon graduation or not, even if the average age isn't further prolonged and extended. Or should this qualification be eliminated when it comes to marriage? Even if this qualification is removed as a social barrier to marriage, how would a young man be able to support himself in married life without the benefits of a college degree and a job? Is it possible to deny a link between marriage and graduation? We believe that if we think openly about this topic and avoid baseless cultural imitation, then solving this problem will not be too difficult. Consider the following possibility. What if young men and women selected their partners through consultation with their parents and friends during the period of their education? After finding someone suitable, the young couple would then join together in a marriage bond, free of any expensive or elaborate wedding ceremonies, in order that they may become familiar with one another, and also understand that in the future they would be fully married. After the passing of some time and further preparation, they could then hold a simple wedding ceremony. The first advantage of this plan is that the youth can find spiritual tranquility and hope, and they can be saved from fears of a vague and lonely future which troubles many of the single youth of today. The second advantage is that it helps ensure the youth against various moral deviations, and it also saves them time in later having to go through the trouble of finding a spouse. This is a plan that most youth are able to follow, and if the parents are observant and careful, they could help guide this process, and many future problems would be resolved in regards to marriage. With the legal engagement of the couple to one another, through the formation of a marriage contract, sexual needs can be met, and such an arrangement offers many of the advantages of marriage, while compensating for the sexual deprivation of youth, which is a major problem that they face. Through such an arrangement, the youth can secure themselves from sexual indecencies and deviations without the imposition of extra expenses on either of their families, as well as being free from the issues related to pregnancies or other similar issues during the period of their education. Another alternative is an official marriage, meaning the completion of a wedding ceremony, but at the same time enacting a plan to prevent pregnancy through various available and lawful means. One of the main problems related to an early marriage is that of pregnancy and the subsequent raising of children. This is a major problem for someone who is occupied with a college education. However, both of these plans are only possible if the wedding ceremony is celebrated simply and without any undue formalities. Obviously, the present-day rituals and expenses, which are without any rational basis, must be put aside in the implementation of such plans. This is the solution if parents and the youth are truly seeking happiness and prosperity. Waiting for one's graduation in order to find a suitable job, and then attempting to buy a car, a home, and also pay for the expenses of a high-end wedding ceremony are all the causes of dozens of deviations found in the youth today, as well as delayed marriages, which take place when one is 35 to 40 years of age. This is an age when one is nearer to retirement, rather than the age one should be getting married. Such a marriage is not only abnormal, but it also lacks in spirit and nobility, and it is not in harmony with humans' natural instincts and the very system of existence. A decrease in matrimony, a major social tragedy. The decrease in marriage and the actual reluctance of youth in marrying and in preferring the unnatural life of bachelors is one of the greatest tragedies of our modern times. It is one of the negative impacts of a more automated lifestyle. Among the problems related to a decrease in marriage is that which results in negative population growth. If such a thing is sustained, then the actual nation is at risk of population extinction, based on the simple fact that not enough children are born to meet the losses taking place. Besides this issue, another even more important danger is that the unmarried individuals lag behind others when it comes to their fulfillment of various social responsibilities. They do not feel like they belong to any community, and they are in essence rootless. They easily move from one place to another, and when faced with problems, they feel as if they have no support, and at times will even commit suicide due to this feeling. According to statistics, the suicide rate is much higher in single people than in people who are married. The problem of quote-unquote brain drain is also more commonplace in single people rather than those who have settled down and married in their country of origin. In addition, most criminals are either single or they are living alone. Marriage, in fact, prevents a man from thinking that he belongs to himself and that any decisions made will only affect himself personally. Contrary to this, marriage helps people understand that they are responsible for their family, and that their family is in reality a microcosm of the family unit known as society. This lack of social responsibility has other negative consequences. The most important of these are the non-utilization and the non-mobilization of all the powers and faculties that are present in human beings towards the improvement and development of one's life. It doesn't take much to provide for a single individual, but it is another matter when a family is concerned. There is a reason why the life of single individuals is filled with more depression, laziness, and indifference when it comes to pushing forward in life and in the full actualization of their potential. Many single individuals who are considered as being weak and unable to earn their own livelihood are transformed through marriage into serious, decisive, and observant people. This is derived from the power of the sense of social responsibility. In this respect, we can compare single people to wandering gypsies who never try to stay in one place or improve the lands in which they live, easily emigrating to other places. From a moral perspective, the vast majority of single people will never reach human perfection because many moral traits such as loyalty, forgiveness, manliness, affection, kindness, dedication, and gratitude are realized in the family setting, where one is confronted with various challenges and issues in the relationship with one's wife and children. Those who are not placed in such a situation are never forced to face up to them and thus reach closer to human perfection. While it can be said that undertaking the responsibilities of a joint life after marriage will be accompanied with various problems as well as obligations, it is also the case that perfection can only be found through facing various issues in life and safely learning how to navigate through them. In addition, there are certain natural needs of the body and spirit which have to be met. Saying no to such needs will lead to various unfavorable mental and physical consequences. By understanding all of these issues as a whole, we would not be exaggerating if we were to call the modern-day tendency towards singleness and the continuous decrease in the marriage rate as a social tragedy. The question which continuously arises is how we shall deal with the issues that the youth face in fulfilling the natural and social obligations of marriage. Is it really possible to get young men and women married at an earlier point in time, even in spite of the present-day conditions of an automated lifestyle, various unreasonable life expectations, disagreements between parents and youth, educational conditions, unemployment of the youth, and the distrust present among them? These points have to be carefully examined, and the resolution of various social problems is impossible until this issue is first resolved. The reality that we must face is that the current dire situation of marriage and its related issues are something that we and our societies have created and in turn imposed upon ourselves. Such a dilemma did not come down from the sky or grow out of the earth. We are the ones who have established it as a result of selfish competition, ignorance, improper judgments, and involvement in a series of destructive customs and rituals. At the same time, just as this problem is a creation of our societies, we are also able to solve it and establish a better way of life based on the realities on the ground and those things which have been divinely revealed to us. Such a way of life will be based on these realities and not based on various fictional and imaginary concepts. Such a solution will not require a miracle, just simple and sound thinking and planning. The possibility of illicit relationships, an important factor for the decrease in the marriage rate. In most parts of the world today, social life is not in a normal and healthy form. This is evidenced by the decrease in marriage and the preference of wide swaths of the youth to a life of singleness rather than married life. We previously mentioned that in addition to the obvious problems in the lack of marriage, another tragedy is the feeling of a lack of social responsibility and a feeling of having no roots, which is a consequence of a long period of bachelorhood. If we factor in the social moral deviations which many single people fall victim to, then the significance of this social problem will become even more evident. At this juncture, let us study the main causes of this dangerous social phenomenon. Without a doubt, this issue isn't caused by one or two factors alone. However, it does have certain main factors which play a more major role. One of the main factors is that of the widespread occurrence of illicit relationships. Due to the easy availability of engaging in illicit relationships in society, women have been relegated to a very low-value commodity that is easily accessible by all. In this manner, women have lost their previous value, significance, and prestige, and they simply do not have the same preciousness that they possessed beforehand. The increasing nudity of women in the modern world has contributed to an initial superficial attraction which soon fades away because, while it superficially attracts, it also designifies women and thus causes them to lose their value with men. This is something which seems opposite to the effect that such women are trying to inspire, but it is one of the many negative effects of immoral public dress. It is for this reason that there is no trace at all of the pure, sincere, and passionate love which existed in the past, and this is because man always finds fervent love in what is not easily accessible. With this being the case, how can a man love something that is so easily available and in public view? It is for this reason that many licentious men ask why they should undergo so many restrictions and responsibilities in order to marry, while they have easy access to many women without any terms or responsibilities. They ask such a question because they are not familiar with the ominous consequences of such immoralities, and they see women as only a means of satisfying their sexual desires. Through such a perspective, they see the acceptance of marriage with its resulting terms and responsibilities as being a foolish decision, and so they spend a majority part of their life in being single. Through taking these facts into account, the effect of the easy availability of illicit relationships in regards to the decrease of marriage becomes much more clear. In Western societies where such freedom and laxity is more commonly found, the decrease in marriage is also more dramatic. In such societies, people marry when they have reached middle age, and even these marriages are weak and short-lived. They often dissolve for small and sometimes absurd reasons. Do illicit relationships have victims? In addition to the discussion mentioned above, there's also the additional aspect of prostitution in society. The free availability of such things also contributes to the decrease in the rate of marriage. The surprising number of such centers are clear proof of the unnatural ethical and moral state of these societies. In our discussion, the issue of prostitution can be considered as a major focal point of physical and emotional diseases with negative effects on marriage. In addition to these problems, there are also the problems that the actual prostitutes face as well. There have been extensive studies and books on the subject of prostitution, and these texts acknowledge that the issue of prostitution is one of the most grievous examples of slavery in the modern era. Prostitutes overall are a group of lonely and really helpless women who are typically used and abused in various gatherings of lust and sensuality, and who are finally left to die forsaken in the worst of conditions, with no one present for their burial. What sort of morality authorizes the normality of this modern-day slavery while claiming to have abolished the institution of slavery in its entirety? We can't forget this example of modern-day slavery, which is, in reality, an institution created by the void of delayed marriage and the easy availability of illicit sexual relationships. The same women who are bogged down in this line of work are often the same victims of illicit relationships who are gradually led to these centers. The story of these women is mentioned in various books, and it is undoubtedly one of the most grievous tragedies of our modern times, as well as a blemish on their societies. Unfortunately, it is not studied and discussed as it should be. Therefore, in order to prevent the dissolution of families, or the decrease in the rate of marriage, and the freedom of these sexual slaves, it is necessary that the freedom given towards illicit relationships be curtailed, and such a thing is not possible without a proper plan of action. In the light of the aforementioned discussion, our beloved youth should take care not to fall for the well-worn tricks of various people who try to pull them towards such types of immoral lifestyles. Ironically, there are people who introduce prostitution as being a social necessity and attempt to reduce its obscene and ugly nature. They go as far as saying that this illicit institution is a means of guarding the chastity of families and the health of the youth. Yet such a statement is completely wrong. Is the existence of a filthy swamp that results in the growth of immorality and the spread of sexually transmitted diseases something that will somehow protect families? Shackles for the youth. Some people ask that while many years have passed from the normal age of our marriage, still, how can we marry when we don't own a vehicle for transportation? We don't yet have a job. We haven't saved enough money to cover the heavy costs of marriage and gifts for the bride. We haven't found a good place to host our marriage ceremony, etc. In other cases, parents ask how they can agree to the marriage of their daughter while an ideal husband with sufficient income, a well-paying job, and a home hasn't proposed yet. People feel that marriage to a young man without any of the above-mentioned things will result in their societal disgrace. Such questions and concerns are in reality unreasonable and irrational pretexts that prevent a great number of youth from getting married. There is a saying which mentions, life has two parts. The first part is spent in wild hopes for the second part, while the second part is spent in sighs of regret for the first part. The issue of modern-day marriage can be described in exactly this fashion. The youth waste the first half of their life hoping for an ideal spouse under ideal circumstances, and the other half in regret at the mistakes they have committed in the first part. The only way out of such false shackles is for the people to save themselves. Society has established an entirely illusory concept for married life, and they have actually missed out on true happiness in order to strive towards an illusory one. We have to know that such false hopes will never actualize and bring one true happiness. Such false hopes and cultural expectations only serve to shackle people and hinder them from marriage, which is one of the most important life events for the youth. If the youth and their parents be decisive and brave enough to cut themselves free of such chains, they would find much freedom and happiness beyond all of their expectations. Is it realistic to expect that someone would own a home, a car, and all of the other luxuries of life at the very start of their youth? When such a thing is considered impossible, why should we set it up as a standard of marriage for ourselves? With the exception of some very select people who inherit a great deal of wealth, the vast majority of society is unable to meet such impossible standards at the very beginning of their youth. Even those who have inherited such wealth have not undergone the trials of working towards their livelihood, and thus it is very possible that they will not be able to maintain their wealth after a period of time due to their inexperience. We believe that marriage with a simple ceremony is something very easy and even compatible with education, provided that both parties understand the proper concept behind marriage. They also have to understand that in the world of creation, everything gradually builds up and better life conditions are gained little by little. It seems that many of the youth are lost in various unreasonable hopes and ideals, and they have forgotten that the most essential aspect of marriage is the combined life of two people who understand one another. Without such an understanding, nothing else will bring them joy and happiness. Our religion has not set any conditions on marriage except that of two individuals willing to live a joint, conjugal life. Unfortunately, this simple institution has been changed into a vastly complicated one. Another interesting lesson can be found in the simple life of seminary students, and this could actually serve as a practical example for other youth. Around 99% of seminary students are married while undergoing their studies, and even though their course load is very heavy, they are able to live with the utmost simplicity on the stipend provided for them, or through their own efforts of farming or various other jobs during the summer. As a result, they do not suffer from any feelings of loneliness, and rather, they feel completely at ease and happy in relation to their marriages. The 7 challenges of matrimony. We have to know that many things which are considered as unpleasant but inevitable necessities of life are actually the products of our illogical deeds and are in fact typically avoidable. Many of the problems that we face in life are in fact made by our own hands, yet people assume it is something that destiny has somehow preordained for them. It is due to our own excuses, obstinacies, and inflexibilities that many small issues become insurmountable disasters. It has been mentioned in the form of legends that Rostam, the Iranian hero, decided to conquer some parts of Iran that no one had conquered before. During his journey towards the heart of the region, he faced 7 great obstacles, each being more difficult than the last. He was able to pass through them only by his own strength and skill. This legend is a romanticized representation of the problems that men face in their own lives, as well as their inherent abilities in overcoming these problems. Nowadays, the issue of marriage can be considered similar to the trials that Rostam passed through. The only difference is that the youth do not possess the bravery and power of the mythical Rostam, nor are they as determined as he is to overcome all obstacles. No other social issue has deviated from its original and normal form as much as that of marriage, with all of its harmful and disturbing consequences. The mainstay of the enormous cost of modern-day marriages is mainly due to unnecessary formalities. Otherwise, the marriage ceremony itself is something extremely simple and would not cause all of these enormous expenditures. During the modern era, marriage has become like mining gold from mines that are filled with impurities. Many people consider the institution of marriage as not even being worth the trouble. These impurities are in reality the wrong customs, the irrational competitions between families, and the false prestige that people are chasing after. In our society, marriage has lost its luster due to the difficulties faced in fulfilling it. Additionally, few people dare to challenge the cultural impurities that have been mixed into it. In this respect, the educated classes are worse than the uneducated classes, and people are unable to overcome the challenge that marriage has turned into. Some people satisfy themselves by reasoning that since marriage is only once, they should not hold simple celebrations. Others reason that they should realize all of their whims and fancies during the course of this ceremony. They ignore that when such irrational reasoning becomes customary, it changes society and becomes the greatest hindrance to the marriage of the youth and their subsequent happiness and felicity. The youth have to overcome all of these obstacles, and much like Rostam's legendary adventures, there are 7 trials which must be overcome. They are as follows. Number 1. Unrealistic expectations. The expectations of females from males, and from males from females, and those of the parents from both of them. Number 2, embarrassment by the parents, families, relatives, and friends. Number 3, heavy dowries. Number 4, extra formalities in the form of wedding ceremonies and dangerous family rivalries. Number 5, rivalry by the families towards marrying their social betters. Number 6, irrational love. And number 7, excessive expectations in the qualities of a spouse, as well as a lack of confidence and trust amongst the couple. When we reflect on these 7 issues, we see that most of them are not even about marriage itself. Rather, they are concerned with its various formalities and embellishments. For instance, consider the issue of being social equals or socially from a higher class. Such a thing is a hindrance to a great number of youth, while it is oftentimes nothing more than a delusion. A 30-year-old man who introduced himself as an engineer in the oil industry stated that while he has a good salary, he had been unable to marry as of yet. He further mentioned that he couldn't select a wife from just any family, and that he was looking for one from a prestigious and well-known family. Yet he said that when he would find such people, they would propose such difficult conditions and exorbitant expenses for that marriage that it was only possible to calculate them using a calculator. It was mentioned to the engineer that if he meant sufficient education and knowledge by the term prestigious, then there were many families that could be introduced to him and who would be willing to marry him. If he meant girls with noble attributes and morality, then again, there would be many girls meeting such qualifications in the society. Unfortunately, this individual actually meant that he was looking for an extremely wealthy family who owned expensive homes and cars. In such a case, the mistake was with the man for assuming that prestige was found in wealth and not in actual human values and characteristics. It was surprising that this individual had found himself unable to find his quote-unquote perfect match. It is interesting to note that in the Islamic tradition, the issue of being equal in rank was different than that which was found in the pre-Islamic society of Arabia. This attitude was strongly condemned in the religious traditions, and Islam has introduced faithful women and men as being of the same rank. For example, the following tradition is one which clearly defines this issue, where it says that the believer from any family, race, or social class is in the same rank and standing as any other believer. This clearly shows that if illusory ideas about class and social standing are eliminated, then both parties can see each other for their human attributes and characteristics based on solid, rational ideas, and not for the wealth or social positions of their families. The same thing can be said about many of the other hindrances of marriage. Strict parents. Such parents seriously endanger the future of their children. Many parents who themselves were youth at one time are unaware of the storm existing in the hearts of the youth, both males and females. These parents tend to be very strict when it comes to the marriage of their children. Their coolness and lack of care seems to stem from the idea that a 1-year or even 5-year delay in the marriage of their children is just a short period of time. Such parents don't understand that a delay of 1 month or even several days can be enough to tip their children over the edge. What is wrong with these parents, and why do they not understand the realities of the period of youth? Can't they remember the passions of their own period of young adulthood before they were married? Why don't they place themselves in the place of their children? Such a lack of care is very dangerous, and it usually ends up costing them dearly. One of the major factors in youth suicide, disease, various perversions, and even their running away from home stems from a lack of attention to this reality. This is particularly true for the virtuous, chaste, and faithful youth. It doesn't only apply to those who are not as religious. The negligence of parents is both unfair and far from the reality. Sometimes, the difficulties of marriage cause parents to unknowingly ignore their understanding of their children's situation and the crisis of their sexual instincts. In some cases, they even convince themselves that their children do not yet wish to get married. Unfortunately, the consequences of this negligence can sometimes entangle the parents in a lifetime of pain and problems, some of which are impossible to remedy after the chain of events has already unfolded. The strictness of parents in the selection of spouses for their children and their baseless and sometimes ridiculous terms and conditions originate from a lack of recognizing how necessary marriage is. When one has recognized the necessity of something, he begins imposing lesser terms and conditions for it, and attempts to make the process of obtaining that necessity much simpler. On the contrary, a lack of recognition of something's necessity makes one inflexible and choosy. I read once in an article that some people even smell cars like they would meat or vegetables before purchasing. If an individual smells cars before buying them, what would they do when selecting a spouse for their sons and daughters? Ironically, such parents are often trapped in various problems, which they never expected, in spite of their choosiness and harsh standards. The reason behind this is that when an honest suitor comes to them, they find that suitor to be lackluster, since such individuals never boast or show off. On the contrary, they will end up accepting dishonest and ostentatious suitors due to their boasting, as well as the other games that such people will play. While it is true that one should be careful in selecting their spouse, there is a big difference between taking care and being too restrictive. When the other party has all the necessary qualifications, and research and consultation have confirmed this, then one should take action without having any doubt and seek assistance from God alone. In such a case, the outcome will undoubtedly be a positive one. According to the body of Islamic traditions encouraging early marriage, and in line with the use of the intellect in selecting a spouse, all parents are advised to avoid undue restrictiveness in the marriage of their children, and through such a policy, stay away from endangering their children. We have to keep in mind that the sexual drive of the youth is so powerful that negligence and carelessness will end up causing them to deviate. The history of mankind and the day-to-day lessons that we see in our society are clear indications of these grave dangers. Who should select, parents or the youth? This was my selection, and that was my parents' selection. The following story was published in various newspapers, and it appears that it is not an isolated incident. Right before the conclusion of the wedding ceremony, an 18-year-old bride pulled off her wedding dress and jumped from the window of the room she was in. She then escaped to a public bathhouse in Narmak, which is a neighborhood in Tehran, Iran, where she tried to commit suicide by slitting her wrists. She was only saved from death by the quick action of medical staff at the local hospital. Later, she explained her story to the police. I was finishing my high school studies last year when I got engaged to a young man. Last year, I was reading a newspaper when I saw his photo and a story on how he had been arrested for stealing jewelry. I called his home, and upon further investigation, I found out that it was true. Last month, one of my father's friends, whose wife had recently passed away, proposed to me. He was a wealthy man who was around 40 years of age. I personally had no interest in him, and had expressed my opinion several times, but no one cared to listen. My father kept pressuring me to accept. Eventually, I found out that invitation cards had been sent for the wedding, and so I had no other alternative but to escape and commit suicide. This story highlights the common misconception that either the family elders can choose a spouse without any consultation with the youth, or the youth can choose their own spouse without any consultation from their elders. Let us first become familiar with both groups and then find what the proper way of selecting a spouse is through proper thought and introspection. One group of youth states the following: why would our parents select our spouses for us? Everyone should select their own life partners. A girl can seem like an angel to our parents, but if we don't like her, then it will be a miserable marriage for us. Various studies conducted by social researchers show that most of the marriages that end with divorce are those formed during young age through the selection of parents. In a nutshell, an adult doesn't need a custodian when it comes to marriage. Suicide and the running away of boys and girls from their families is the result of this massive mistake by parents, and many examples of such behavior can be found in the newspapers. If in the past times the youth were not well equipped in understanding what was best for them, today the times have changed and they are well aware of many things before reaching even the age of puberty. The mentality of parents is oftentimes outdated and not compatible with the spirit of our times. Due to this reason, they are unable to understand the preferences of young boys and girls. In brief, parents should not intervene in this critical issue and should leave it to the taste and ideas of their children. On the other hand, parents state the following: even Plato and Avicenna were not perfect in their youth. This means that they are of the opinion that the youth are overly optimistic and simple-minded, and that they are very easily deceived by things of a superficial nature due to their own innocence and sincerity. They don't understand that some people look very good superficially, but are in reality devils on the inside. There are many individuals who memorize the most beautiful words of love and repeat them in a masterful way to trick and allure people of the opposite sex. Yet when the marriage is over, they display their actual devious self. Even the most intelligent of youth need a guide for marriage, and this is because it is their first time going through this process. Just as we seek help in other things from those more experienced than us, it should also be the case with the issue of marriage. In addition, parents are never the enemies of their children, and they are always trying to help and protect them, because they love them even more than they love themselves. Even illiterate and otherwise uneducated parents are experienced with the issues related to marriage, and they are able to distinguish the realities that are there from those things which are not, or are illusory. In addition to this issue, it's also not right from a moral point of view if a youth totally disregards his parents who have devoted their entire life in caring for them, and not pay any attention to their feelings. The youth shouldn't only think of satisfying their own desires in this regard and forget the debt that they owe to their parents. Therefore, we believe that none of these two views mentioned above are realistic. Parents don't have the right to impose their ideas exclusively on the youth in relation to spousal selection, nor is it advisable for the youth to go through this critical process alone. The proper way is to go through this process understanding that the youth have the right of selection, but that the consultation and advice of the parents also plays an indispensable role. Parents have to consider the reality that spouse selection isn't just an issue based on logic and reasoning. Rather, personal taste also plays an important role. What's interesting is that the tastes of two brothers can be radically different, and this is something which must be recognized and understood. An imposed marriage is unlikely to last long, and chances are that sooner or later it will end up in divorce. The most dangerous situation is when parents put their own personal interests in selecting someone for their children. Such people are unequivocally wrong. On the other hand, the youth should know that the fervor inherent in their age tends to blind the vision and makes them see nothing but the positives, all the while ignoring all the negatives. Parents and friends have the potential to help them through their detachment and experience. Even very wise youth are not considered to be needless of the assistance of their friends, relatives, and parents in the various issues which they confront in their lives. If they disregard the advice of these people in this most critical issue, then they might lose the support of their advice in future issues that they will face. Due to this reason, it is vital for the youth to use their network of family and friends. It will benefit them in this issue as well as future issues. From an ethical point of view, the children should obtain the consent of their parents, and it is a requirement for previously unmarried girls to first obtain their father's permission. Of course, there are exceptional cases, like when the father wants to arrange a marriage against the interests of his child due to conflicting personal interests, or when the father wishes to obstruct the marriage of his daughter against her personal interests. In such cases, his permission is not necessary for the marriage to go forward. Infatuations, a danger in the life of the youth. Many words have been said in expressing the concept of love and its splendor. For example, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe has said, "Love is the officer of life and eternal felicity." A number of famous Eastern philosophers have gone as far as saying that any movement and motion, even the motion of the planets and the cosmos, is caused by a type of love. If we understand this in its general sense, meaning that all motion is caused by attraction, then it would be a true statement. Another group of writers and philosophers have attacked love and reviled it with deep disgust. A well-known Eastern writer has said that love is a chronic disease like tuberculosis, cancer, and gout. A wise man would do well to avoid it. Others, like the famous astronomer Copernicus, have said, if we do not call love a sort of insanity, at least we can say that it arises out of imperfect minds. Some, like Carlyle, have gone on to say that love is not only a sort of insanity, but it is actually a combination of several types of insanity. Such contradictions on the view of love originate not from a contradiction of judgment of a reality, but rather from the different points of view. That is to say that each of these writers has discussed one of the facets of love that they have encountered in their own lives. Due to this reason, it must be said that if by love we mean a powerful and extraordinary attraction between two individuals, or in general between two creatures, towards the achievement of a greater goal, then is it really possible to imagine something that can be higher? Such a thing will bring out the power of creativity to such a high degree that it can overcome any hindrance and obstacle in the path towards perfection and development. Love has been admired for this power and creativity, and many of the best works of literature and architecture have been created under its influence and drive. On the other hand, if we mean to say that love is the powerful attraction that pushes two individuals towards sin and other vices, then clearly it is something shameful and unworthy. Moving past its resulting consequences will not be simple nor easy. If by love we mean the crazy attraction that completely overcomes the intellect and the rational mind, then it really is worthy of scorn and derision. This shows that love has various facets, and it can be looked at from different points of view. Therefore, both scorn and admiration are appropriate, depending on which facet one is looking at. Under the cover of romantic love. It is noteworthy for all youth to know that during these times many crimes and evils are being committed under the guise of romantic love. Anyone can pretend to be a true lover, and it is very easy to use this disguise towards deceiving the inexperienced youth. After realizing their goals, such people will forget about all the things that they said or had said, and then disappear. Therefore, we have to realize that the words of such people are completely empty, and there is no trace of affection or love in their hearts. The only thing that remains from such a relationship is that of regret and sorrow. The youth should be aware and watch against such people who use their lies and deceits in order to fool and hurt people. Some of these people even send the same love letter to multiple girls at once. This doesn't only apply to girls, but to boys as well. Both should be careful against falling into such traps. Unfortunately, people who are deprived of affection tend to look for these things more than others. Therefore, such people should be more careful than others. In the next chapter, entitled Pitfalls of Love, we will discuss additional issues related to this topic. The pitfalls of love. As we have mentioned previously, love is defined as a powerful attraction between two individuals. It is one of the manifestations of the human spirit and an amazing masterpiece of creation. When the marriage of two individuals is based on such deep affection and attraction, again, not based on anything superficial or illusory, then it will surely remain steady. Such marriages are based on faithfulness and provide comfort and peace for the two partners. Such a love also differs from false and artificial love, which appear even more passionate from a superficial point of view, because such affairs are based on the illegitimate satiation of desires. The end result of such a relationship is that one or more of the partners will disappear once the desires are fulfilled. There are dangers apparent to even relationships based on real love, and we should not be neglectful of any of these dangers. The first pitfall. It is true that ordinary emotions have a powerful whitewashing effect. When this is true, then more powerful emotions will have even more extreme effects on our perceptions and how we understand the reality of various things. An individual in love only sees the positives, while someone in a state of hate and anger will only see the negatives. Both of these states are not conducive to properly understanding reality. If someone gives even gentle advice to someone in love, it is likely that they will face a very harsh reaction, and this is because their state is not based on rationality, but rather emotion. It is interesting to note that people in love usually think that they have somehow achieved a deeper level of understanding through their state, and that is why others cannot see what they see. They furthermore believe that the judgment and advice of others are the results of their lack of awareness and improper understanding. In such a case, giving advice to someone will not only prove unfruitful, but it may even be dangerous. When the passion of such relationships is extinguished through sexual intercourse, then the veils are drawn aside and reality hits. It seems to the lover that they have just awoken from a long dream. Much of the apparent positive aspects of the relationship have changed, and they no longer appear as they used to. After this awakening, regret and depression cast their heavy shadow, and a choking darkness covers their spirit. Sometimes, the shock of this rapid alternation is so great that people become completely lost and even so fearful as to commit suicide. It is not easy to prevent this state, and it results in side effects because people in love rarely listen to advice. Due to this reason, rational arguments hold no persuasion. Their logic differs with that of others, and the distance between their world and the world of others is so great that no common language exists therein. Such people deal only with the language of love, while others are speaking to them with the language of logic and intellect. Indeed, these are two languages completely at odds with one another. The best way to talk to such people is through slowly and indirectly broaching a subject. Through the art of gentle talk and indirect persuasion, it is possible that such a person would slowly and step by step awaken from the path that they have embarked on. Through such a method, an individual in love will come to know of their mistakes and return with their own free will. In addition, when people give such youth advice, it is always possible that they will accept it due to their great respect or love for those who are advising them. Even if they themselves do not understand the issue, it is possible that their various instincts will guide them through the guise of respecting the elders and their friends, and such things will save them from themselves. It is also a good tactic to implicitly agree with a person in love in order to gain their confidence and over time be there when they need advice the most. If an individual simply disagrees outright with everything the other person says, then their confidence will not be gained, and they will not have the necessary trust when the time comes for giving advice. It is essential to understand that humiliating and blaming such individuals will have very negative effects and should strictly be avoided. In addition to its negative effects, it is also unfair to blame people who are in this dangerous situation. Wild love. When we look at love from its fairy tale point of view, we see that it does not recognize any limits or boundaries. It transgresses social obligations, disregards moral concern, and is incompatible with advice and caution. This is why it's said that when love enters from one door, wisdom escapes from the other. In various literary works, we also see how love and wisdom are at constant conflict. This is why Carlyle, the famous British philosopher, has condemned love by calling it a form of insanity, or a combination of several types of insanity. Yet, when we look at love from other perspectives, we see it as a magnificent creative factor that is a positive force for change. The problem and danger of love begin when the person in love does not accept any control and surrenders his whole being to it. When a person enters this state, the mind ceases to function, and so many mistakes can be made. If sympathetic friends do not come to the aid of the love-struck individual and guide him to a path that is moderate and rational, then such a person can make any blunder, because he is indifferent to everything except for the fulfillment of his love. And such a person doesn't really think on the repercussions of what he is doing, neither his reputation or his friends, relatives, or the social and moral obligations that he is bound to. The end result of such a path will be the loss of everything that he has worked so hard for. However, after such a person awakens from his sleep, they feel a rush of grief and sorrow for what has been done and what has been lost. This regret weighs on their heart and mind, but it typically comes too late and is of no use. Our youth should be aware of this massive danger, which may sometime begin with only a glance. They should control themselves at this most primary stage, when it is easily controlled, and avoid taking it to a later and more dangerous stage. The best way to avoid such dangers is through choosing healthy entertainment and hobbies, such as can be found in various educational, sport-based, or other endeavors. The youth should also avoid associating with ignorant individuals who can kindle the fires of such dangers, and they should think deeply about the dangers of what can happen to them in the future if they embark on such a path. It is at this stage that friends and family play a crucial role in awakening them through friendly and well-placed advice. If such an opportunity is not taken, the chance may be lost forever.